I'm Mabel. I'm 76 years old, and I just reclaimed an entire wedding venue during my own grandson's ceremony because my son looked me in the eye and said, "Don't sit with us. You're not family." I'd just returned from caring for my dying sister. I showed up in my best dress, clutching the invitation with shaking hands. But when I arrived, they treated me like a stranger. Worse. And when my son said those words, those final, cruel words, I quietly stepped away and made one phone call. Even the wedding singer stopped mid-song when they realized what I'd done. Before we continue, I'd love to know, where are you watching from today? Comment below. It wasn't always like this. I hadn't worn that dress in 12 years. It was the same navy blue one I wore to Harold's funeral. Still smelled faintly of lavender and mothballs, a scent that always reminded me of endings. But I'd chosen it because it was the nicest thing I owned, and today was supposed to be a celebration. My grandson was getting married. My Sammy. My little boy with the thick curls and peanut butter-stained shirts. And I was going to be there, front row, proud as ever. I'd just come back from Houston after nearly 3 months. My sister Lillian had been battling late-stage breast cancer, and I was the only one who could stay. No one else in the family volunteered. "You've always been the caretaker, Mabel," Lillian had whispered one night, her fingers wrapped around mine like brittle branches. "Don't lose yourself in their silence." She passed peacefully a week before the wedding. I hadn't even unpacked my bags when I found the invitation buried under a stack of junk mail. No RSVP call, no follow-up text, no mention of a plus one, just a cream-colored envelope, a little smudged with elegant gold lettering. Samuel and Olivia, a celebration of love. Even the return address was different than the one I'd seen in the group chat weeks ago. I remember standing in my living room, squinting at the invite, rubbing my ring with my thumb, Harold's old wedding band, which I wore on a chain around my neck now. He'd know what to do, I whispered to myself. By noon, I was dressed and out the door. I took the bus. The driver looked at me kindly when I asked where the new venue was, some upscale vineyard about 40 minutes outside of town. The ride was quiet, save for the hum of the engine and the occasional ding of someone requesting a stop. I watched the fields pass by, my fingers pressed against the cool window glass. I kept rehearsing what I'd say when I saw Sammy. How proud I was. How handsome he looked in the graduation photo still on my mantel. I wondered if he still remembered when we baked that crooked birthday cake together, just the two of us, after his parents forgot. The venue appeared like something out of a magazine, ivory stone walls, lanterns hanging from the trees, the smell of fresh-cut grass and rose petals everywhere. But something felt off. There were signs, literal ones, reserved for immediate family only, marked along the shaded seating area. A smiling young woman with a clipboard stood by a guest list, scanning names. I gave her mine. She frowned, checked again. "I'm sorry. Could you spell it one more time?" I did. She typed something on her tablet. "There must be some error. Do you have your invitation with you?" I pulled the card from my purse with trembling fingers. "Oh," she said, softer now. "I see. You weren't marked as confirmed. I think they moved the seating around." Moved the seating around? My legs felt suddenly fragile beneath me. I clutched my purse tighter and took a breath. A waiter walked by with champagne flutes. Somewhere inside, a string quartet was playing a delicate piece I didn't recognize. Laughter drifted through the trees, light and cruel. And above it all, I saw them, my son and his wife, walking side by side, their clothes impeccable, their smiles rehearsed. They saw me. She nudged him with her elbow. He looked away. I stood still for a moment, like an ornament someone had forgotten to put away after the holidays. Out of place. Out of time. Then I walked toward them, steady as I could, heels clicking softly against the polished path. I called his name Daniel. My voice cracked slightly, and I hated that it did. He turned. So did she. "Oh," she said, blinking as if surprised I'd shown up. "You made it." Daniel stepped forward, putting one hand on my elbow. Not warmly, just firmly enough to stop me from going any farther. "We didn't think you were coming," he said. "I came back as soon as Lillian passed," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I wouldn't miss Sammy's day." He hesitated. We just didn't want things to feel complicated," she said, her voice dipped in honey and poison. "You've been away a long time. The family section is really tight, and, well, appearances matter." I looked at Daniel. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Just then, a photographer stepped near. "Family photo, everyone!" she chirped. The bride's side gathered around her. The groom's side formed neatly on the other, and I stood there, holding the invite they'd hoped I'd ignore. My voice felt like it belonged to someone else when I said, "Where should I stand?" And that's when he said it. Daniel looked right at me, his expression unreadable, and said loud enough for the photographer and guests nearby to hear, "Don't sit with us. You're not family." I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I just turned, walked slowly down the path, and made a decision that would silence the entire wedding. I don't remember walking back to the bench, but I remember how the sunlight hit the gravel, the way the tiny stones sparkled beneath my feet like they were mocking me. I remember the cold press of the wooden seat under my dress and the faint, dizzying scent of gardenias nearby. I sat down slowly, careful not to wrinkle the card still in my hand, the one that invited me here under false warmth. My hands were shaking, but not from anger. It was deeper than that. A kind of hollow ache that settled into your bones when someone you built your life around decided you were disposable. I stared down at the invitation. Gold foil lettering, curling script, a celebration of love. I let out a breath, half laugh, half sob. For a second, I could hear Harold again. Not his voice, not clearly, just the rhythm of it, the sound he made when he tried to make me laugh with his corny jokes. The way he'd brush my shoulder when he passed behind me in the kitchen. He would have never let this happen. "You're not family." Daniel's voice echoed in my ears like a slap on repeat, and it stung because I knew it wasn't just his words, it was his belief. How do you become invisible to the very people you gave everything to? I closed my eyes, and like a cruel trick of memory, my mind took me back to a night long ago. It was winter. Daniel was only 11. The power had gone out, and the house was freezing. I'd lit every candle I had and wrapped him in layers of blankets. I remember the sound of the wind rattling the windows, and the way his little teeth chattered. I'd just gotten home from my second job working the register at a 24-hour diner and hadn't eaten all day, but I'd brought home a leftover slice of pie. "Have the pie, Ma," Daniel had said, trying to be generous even then. I fed it to him bite by bite while my own stomach growled. That's what mothers do. Another memory, the time I missed my anniversary dinner with Harold because Daniel had a fever. I sat beside his bed all night, cool cloth on his forehead, whispering lullabies until the sun came up. He'd looked so small then, so full of trust. I had built my entire life around that boy, poured every ounce of strength into raising him right. And somewhere along the way, I became the wallpaper always there, never seen. Back on the bench, I wiped my eyes with the edge of my sleeve. My lipstick had smudged, and I could feel the heat of humiliation rising to my face. I hated that I let anyone see me cry, especially her, my daughter-in-law, with that smug, polished grin. I'd seen that look before. The same one she gave me when I gave Sammy a handmade quilt for Christmas while she handed out iPads. Or when I brought my famous lemon pie to Easter and she forgot to put it on the dessert table. It wasn't hatred. It was worse than that. It was erasure. And Daniel, my Daniel, he let her. "You're not family." The words stung again. Not just because they were cruel, but because he believed them. A couple passed me, murmuring about the appetizers. Neither acknowledged me. I could have been a gardener or a guest's +1. It didn't matter. I slowly opened my purse and reached inside for something I hadn't looked at in years. A small, worn folder. Brown leather, edges cracked, the flap held shut with a simple loop. I hadn't meant to bring it, it was just always in there. One of those things you forget you carry until the weight reminds you. Inside was a single document. Yellowed now, the ink slightly faded. But the signature at the bottom was unmistakable. Harold G. Whitman. It had been his dream to own something permanent, something we could pass down. When he was still alive, we pooled our savings and invested in a few small properties around town. A laundromat, a bakery, and oddly enough, a struggling events venue that couldn't make rent. I never thought much of it. Harold handled all the papers, and I signed where he told me. He always said, "One day, this'll be ours. They'll throw parties under our roof." I never paid attention to which buildings we still had shares in after he passed. The grief swallowed too much. I let the lawyers handle it, signed whatever they sent. But something about this folder. I opened it again. Whitman and Whitman Events, LLC. Partnership contract. Harold and Mabel Whitman equal owners. Venue listed. Rose Hill Estate Vineyard. My heart skipped. Rose Hill. This venue. My fingers traced the faded paper. A postscript in Harold's handwriting. If anything happens to me, ownership reverts 51% to Mabel. Always protect the family. I let out a shaky breath. Everything around me seemed to slow. Somewhere in the distance, the music changed. The crowd inside was laughing, glasses clinking, but I sat with a quiet storm growing inside me. They thought I had no power. They thought I had no place. They forgot whose name was still written in the foundation. And in that moment, I stopped being the forgotten guest and remembered I was still the owner of the damn building. I didn't go back inside right away. I sat for a long time, just listening. The music drifted in waves, soft violins, a woman singing something sweet about forever love. I watched bees buzz lazily around the flower beds, their calm oblivion a strange comfort. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It had settled into something colder, something clearer. I folded the partnership document back into the folder and slipped it deep into my purse. My fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sudden realization that everything was about to change. They thought they could erase me, but they forgot I still remembered every brick Harold and I helped build, every dollar we scraped to invest, every late-night conversation about legacy, about family, about never letting them take what we built. He was gone. But I was still here. I stood up slowly, pressing my palm into the bench to steady myself. My knees ached. My back twinged. My heels pinched. But I walked back toward the venue with my chin high and my purse clutched tight against my chest. As I reached the entrance, I paused beside a table filled with place cards. Dozens of elegant little name tags arranged alphabetically on golden holders. I scanned them slowly. No, Mabel. No, Grandma. Not even guest of the groom. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd scrubbed me out on purpose. A waiter moved past me with a tray of shrimp skewers. I stopped him gently. "Excuse me," I said. "Where are the family seats?" He looked at me, puzzled, then pointed toward the far left corner. "Reserved sections up front, past the roses." I followed his gesture with my eyes and saw it long white chairs with satin ribbons, name tags clipped to the back of each one. A small sign hung from a garden hook. Reserved for immediate family only. The seats were almost full. I could see Daniel and his wife seated already. Her parents, a few cousins. No one turned to look at me. I started to walk forward. The gravel crunched under my shoes. The sun caught the small rhinestones on my neckline, casting tiny dots of light across my dress. My purse strap dug into my shoulder. Daniel saw me coming. So did she. Her face tightened. That same tight little smile I'd grown used to over the years, the one that meant trouble, always hidden beneath courtesy. Daniel stood and met me halfway, stopping just before the seating area. "Mom," he said quickly, glancing nervously behind him. "Listen, I just want to sit with my family," I said, calm and low. He shifted. It's complicated." Behind him, she stepped forward. Olivia. Always perfectly composed, always 2 steps ahead in her mind. She tilted her head and said sweetly, "We just didn't know if you'd be here, Mabel. And we didn't want to risk any awkwardness. You know how these things are." "No," I said. "I don't." Her smile thinned. "The photographer has a tight shot list," she added. "And, well, we didn't want to overwhelm Samuel today." I looked at Daniel again. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "You agreed to this?" I asked. Silence. "I raised you," I said softly, my voice cracking. He looked up at me finally. "Mom, it's just a seat. Don't make this a big thing. Just a seat. Just a chair." As if I hadn't built the family he sat with. As if my presence now would tarnish their picture-perfect tableau. "It's not a big deal," Olivia said, patting my shoulder like I was a patient in a nursing home. "We can find you a spot near the back." She signaled a nearby usher. "No," I said, stepping back. The usher paused mid-step. "It's fine," Daniel said to him. "Just show her to the extra seating." Extra. That word landed like a stone in my chest. I was no longer the mother who nursed him through chickenpox, who worked triple shifts to buy his college books, who sat alone in a cheap motel the night of his elopement because they wanted something small. I was now an extra, a burden, a relic. "Wait," I said, turning back toward Daniel. He paused, exasperated. "Mom, please." I looked straight into his eyes. "If Harold were here." "But he's not," Olivia cut in sharply now. "Let's not pretend he would have wanted a scene." My voice caught in my throat. That name, my husband's name, used as a silencer. As if she knew him. As if she had any right to speak for the man who gave me that ring still warm beneath my blouse. My lip trembled. Daniel touched my arm again. "Don't make this harder." Harder? As if I was the one ruining their day? I pulled my arm away. Around us, guests began to notice. A few tilted heads. Some whispers. "Maybe we should," Olivia murmured. And then Daniel said it. Loudly. Clearly. His voice rang out across the venue, over the soft music and the murmuring guests. "Don't sit with us. You're not family." Gasps. One or two hands flying to mouths. Someone's phone camera lifted, then quickly lowered again. I stared at him, then at her. The two of them, side by side, like a polished statue built on the bones of my sacrifice. I turned without a word. But I didn't walk away from the wedding. I walked straight toward the one person who still worked for me and whispered something that would change everything. I don't remember the path beneath my feet as I walked away, but I do remember the faces, turning, watching, pretending not to. They always pretend. I passed the guest book table, the rose petal aisle, the drink station where glasses clinked like wind chimes in summer. No one stopped me. No one followed. The string quartet kept playing, sweet and oblivious, like the world hadn't just split in two. In my purse, the folder felt heavier now. It wasn't just paper anymore. It was memory, proof, promise. At the back of the venue, near the service entrance, I found him, Dean. I hadn't seen him in years, not since Harold's funeral. He stood behind a row of folding chairs, clipboard in hand, checking off vendor deliveries. Same thick glasses, same tidy mustache, though he'd added a little weight around the middle. I remembered when he used to clean up after Harold and I hosted charity events in the old church basement. "Dean," I said. He turned. His face lit up. "Miss Mabel? My God, what are you doing here?" He hugged me before I could answer. "I thought they said you weren't coming," he said, stepping back. I gave him a tired smile. "They didn't expect me." His brow furrowed. I opened my purse and pulled out the folder. His eyes scanned it, his mouth opening slightly. "Wait, this is still active?" I nodded. "As of this morning, confirmed by Harold's lawyer." Dean let out a long, slow whistle. "Well, I'll be damned." I looked him square in the eyes. "I don't want to ruin Sammy's wedding, but I won't be erased." He understood. Of course he did. He looked down at his list, then back up at me. You want subtle or visible? Silent, I said. But seen. He smiled. Leave it with me. Back inside, the ceremony was beginning. I didn't sit. I stood just out of sight, behind a trellis of white blossoms near the edge of the main aisle. The officiant cleared his throat. Guests shifted forward. Olivia's dress sparkled in the sun like glass. Daniel stood at the altar, straightening his cuffs. His posture stiff, but not nervous. He looked composed, in control, as if nothing had happened. As if he hadn't just disowned his mother in front of 150 people. I looked around. No one whispered anymore. They smiled, sipped their drinks, held programs. The performance had resumed, and I watched it like a ghost at her own funeral. Until the first shift happened. It was small. One waiter, quietly pulling back a tray of champagne just as a guest reached for it. A second, rolling a cake cart back into the kitchen. The music stopped mid-song, then restarted with the wrong cue. Dean's work had begun, and soon they'd all know. But before that, something else happened. Something I hadn't planned, something that cracked me more than all the rest. I was still standing behind the trellis when I heard my name. A whisper. Mabel? It was Margaret, Olivia's aunt. She'd always been kind, in a removed sort of way. We'd shared deviled eggs and quiet smiles at past Thanksgivings. She stepped toward me, her voice low. I just heard what Daniel said. That was cruel. I blinked. You heard? She nodded, eyes shining. I didn't say anything because, well, Olivia runs this family like a campaign. But that wasn't right. A beat passed between us. Then she whispered, You deserve to sit up there. I didn't respond. She touched my hand lightly, then walked back to her seat. A tremor moved through me. Not anger, not even pride. Just sadness, because even the people who agreed knew better than to speak up until it was safe. The ceremony ended. Guests clapped. The couple kissed. Confetti flew. And then the real unraveling began. Dean coordinated it perfectly. First, the caterers halted service. The bar staff disappeared. The music cut again, dead silence this time. Daniel looked confused. Olivia's eyes scanned the crowd like a general losing her formation. And then, I stepped forward, not into the spotlight, just far enough. Far enough to be seen. Someone gasped. Another raised a phone. And as the confusion swelled, I simply walked to the manager's booth and handed over the document. He scanned it, looked at Dean, then at me. I nodded. He clicked off his mic, adjusted the speaker system, and whispered to his assistant. And that's when the music died completely. The hum of voices faded, and Dean spoke into the mic, not loud but clear. Please pause for a brief announcement. All eyes turned. Olivia frowned. Daniel squinted into the light. Dean continued. At this time, per the legal ownership clause activated this morning, the venue will be undergoing management transition. We ask for your patience. There was a long, stretching silence. Then Olivia's voice, sharp and brittle. What is this? Dean didn't answer. I did. I stepped up beside him. Every step deliberate. Every heel click echoing across the marble. I took the mic gently, my hand steady. I won't be long, I said. The guests stilled. I am Mabel Whitman, Harold's wife, Daniel's mother, Samuel's grandmother, and I own 51% of this venue. Gasps. A few heads snapped toward Daniel, others toward Olivia. Today is about love, and I will not ruin it. But I will not be erased from it either. Daniel looked like he'd been struck. Olivia was frozen. I was told I'm not family, I said softly, but I remember who built this place, and I will not be dismissed in the very house we poured our life into. I handed the mic back, turned, and walked off stage. What would you do if your own child said you're not family? Would you fight back or walk away forever? Sometimes, the deepest pain isn't betrayal, it's being forgotten. And just as I reached the edge of the tent, A voice behind me called out, shaky, desperate, and all too familiar. "Mom!" Wait. The words stopped me. Not like a command, not like a son calling for his mother. Number. They hung in the air like a faint echo from a place I once knew, a place I no longer belonged. I didn't turn around right away. Behind me, the murmurs of guests swelled like waves crashing against polished marble. Some looked uncomfortable, others amused. A few wide-eyed like they were watching theater, not real life. I could feel Daniel's footsteps behind me, slow and tentative. "Mom," he said again, softer now. "Can we talk?" I finally turned. His face was pale, his suit slightly rumpled, his tie askew, like he'd just woken up to the damage he'd helped cause. "Now you want to talk?" I asked quietly. I didn't mean he started, but I raised a hand. "No," I said. "Not now." He opened his mouth to protest, but then looked at my face, really looked. And he stopped. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to cry. The silence between us did all the speaking. I walked past him, out of the tent, back toward the garden, where the air was cooler, the petals still untrampled, and no one cared what name was on a seating chart. I found a bench beneath a willow tree, the same one I'd rested on earlier. My body sank into it like it had been waiting for me. The sun had shifted slightly, casting soft shadows. Birds rustled in the branches above. Somewhere in the distance, the music had resumed something upbeat, celebratory, almost defiant, but I didn't care. I reached into my purse again, fingers brushing past my phone and lip balm, until they found the folded wedding invitation. I opened it slowly, smoothing the crease with the back of my hand. Samuel and Olivia. A celebration of love. I stared at it. The gold foil looked gaudy now, almost cruel. They had called it a celebration, but it felt like a funeral. Not of a life, but of a relationship. The death of a bond. I leaned back against the bench and closed my eyes. "He'd know what to do," I whispered, touching the chain around my neck. My wedding ring pressed against my chest. A memory surfaced, uninvited, unwelcome. Daniel was 7. He'd broken his arm falling off his bike. I'd run 3 blocks barefoot to reach him, scooped him up, bloodied and sobbing, and rushed him to the ER. The doctor said. He kept saying, "I want my mama," over and over. I remembered holding his hand as they set the bone, kissing his forehead, whispering, "I've got you, baby. I've always got you." Where did that boy go? When did I stop being the woman he ran to and become the one he pushed aside? Footsteps approached again, but not Daniel's. "Dean." He sat beside me gently, careful not to crowd. "You all right?" he asked. "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." He nodded, looking straight ahead. A breeze lifted a few petals across the stone path. The smell of crushed rosemary drifted from the nearby catering tent. "Hell of a thing you did," he said after a while. "I didn't plan it," I said. "Not all of it. But you followed through," he replied. "That takes something most people lose with age." "Pride?" I said, half a laugh. "No," he said. "Self-respect." We sat in silence for a few beats. Then he added, "They're serving lemonade now. You want some?" I shook my head. "Not yet." He stood, gave my shoulder a gentle squeeze, and walked back toward the chaos. I reached into my purse again, pulled out the brown leather folder, and stared at it. That document Harold's legacy had saved me today. But it wasn't just about ownership. It was about remembrance. He knew this could happen. He saw something I didn't, and he made sure I'd never be powerless even if I forgot my own worth. I unfolded the last page. His signature stared back at me, and then I noticed something I hadn't before. A small note scribbled in his handwriting at the bottom corner. "Don't fight them with anger, Mabel. Fight them with paper." My throat tightened. Because even in death, Harold was still guiding me, still protecting me, still reminding me who I was. Not just a mother, not just a grandmother, but a woman who mattered. A woman who had built A woman who remembered. The sky darkened slightly as clouds rolled in. The soft rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. It would rain soon, and I welcomed it. Sometimes, the sky cries for you when you're too tired to cry for yourself. As I stood to leave, a small voice stopped me. Grandma? I turned. Samuel. My grandson. He looked unsure, caught between loyalty and love, like a rope pulled at both ends. I didn't know, he said quietly. I believe you, I replied. I should have made sure. I just thought Mom and Dad. He trailed off. He looked so much like Daniel at that age. It made my chest ache. He pulled something from his pocket, a small, folded photo. I wanted you to have this, he said, placing it in my palm. It was a picture of Harold and me, dancing at our anniversary. I was wearing the same navy blue dress, his hand at my waist, his eyes only on me. I found it in Dad's drawer, Samuel said. He still keeps it. I didn't say anything. I just closed my hand around the photo. He lingered. I'm sorry, Grandma, he whispered. Then he walked away. And that's when I realized I wasn't done yet, not even close, because the final dance hadn't even begun. The sky cracked open 20 minutes later. Not a storm, just a soft, steady rain. Gentle enough to make the gravel glisten, cold enough to chase the guests inside. I didn't move from the bench. My dress soaked slowly, beginning at the hem, climbing upward in damp chills. But I stayed. Sometimes, the quiet afterpain feels better than any shelter. In my hand, the photo Samuel had given me was now tucked inside the leather folder, safe between pages that had waited years to be needed. I traced Harold's handwriting again. Don't fight them with anger, Mabel. Fight them with paper. I could almost hear him say it, that half-serious, half-laughing tone he used when he tried to make financial paperwork sound romantic. And suddenly, I was back there again 12 years ago, in his hospital room. He was down to 130 pounds. His voice had gotten so soft I had to lean in to hear. Check the third drawer in my desk, he whispered. I left everything signed, just in case. Don't talk like that, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled, weakly. Mabel, you and I both know I'm not walking out of here. I cried quietly, so he wouldn't see. He reached for my hand, squeezing it with all the strength he had left. Promise me, he said. If they forget what we built, you remind them. I shook my head. They wouldn't. His eyes, so familiar, so certain, held mine. Promise me, anyway. And I did. I promised. I'd forgotten that until now. Forgotten the urgency in his voice. Forgotten the clarity in his dying eyes. But now it was back vivid, burning, and it filled me with something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. I pulled the folder into my lap, wiped the moisture from the corners, and I began to read line by line the details of our ownership agreement. I wasn't just listed as a beneficiary. I was a managing partner. Silent, yes, but with full legal rights to control or withdraw property access under specific conditions. Dean had already enacted the operational clause transition of control in the event of co-owner reactivation. But I needed more. Not vengeance. Closure. I needed to finish what Harold started. By the time the rain stopped, the sky had turned pewter gray. Guests milled about inside, now pushing through cocktail hour. I stood, knees stiff, and walked around the back of the building. Dean spotted me near the vendor exit. You all right? He asked. I need a lawyer, I said. He tilted his head. You got one in mind? I nodded. Harold's old one. Sam Tiller, corner of Jackson and Fifth. Dean whistled. Still kicking. He's the only man I trust with my name, I said. An hour later, I was sitting in Sam's musty old office. Same cracked leather chairs, same dusty blinds. The air smelled like old wood and stubborn men. He looked up from the document I'd laid on his desk, eyebrows raised. Well, I'll be damned, he said. Harold really thought of everything, didn't he? He did, I said. And now I need to follow through. Sam pulled out a yellow legal pad, clicked his pen, and began writing. "You want full reclamation?" he asked. "No," I said. "Not yet." He looked at me, surprised. "I want to finish the event," I said. "Let the boy have his day." "Then what?" "Then," I said slowly, "I'm donating my share." He froze. "To who?" "To a widow's fund," I said. "In Harold's name. Let someone else get married here. Someone who wouldn't forget their own mother." Sam nodded slowly. "You sure about this?" "I'm not walking away," I said. "I'm walking through." It took another 30 minutes to draft the papers. I signed every page with steady hands. And when it was done, I tucked the file into my purse beside the photo of Harold and me dancing, the same one where I wore this very dress. I rose from the chair, smoothed my skirt, and said softly, "I think it's time I went back." Sam smiled. "Show them what quiet power looks like." When I returned to the venue, the rain had left behind a gleaming path of light. The sun had begun to set, casting golden streaks across the sky. Guests were eating now. Laughter had returned. Glasses clinked. Olivia's voice carried above the rest, sharp and insistent. Daniel sat beside her, face unreadable. No one noticed me slip in, except Dean. He met my eyes from across the floor and gave a small nod. I found a spot near the back, not too far, not too close, and waited. In my purse, the papers sat still, warm from my body heat, and I felt something shift. Not revenge, not justice, just peace beginning to form, because the wedding wasn't over yet, and neither was I. By the time I walked back in, the music had returned to its pleasant drone, and people had returned to their shrimp skewers and sparkling cider. But I wasn't here for the shrimp. I was here to keep a promise, the one I made to Harold in that hospital room, and the one I made to myself, the second Daniel said I wasn't family. I stood quietly near the corner of the reception tent, where the lighting was dim and the scent of rain still lingered on the breeze. My purse felt heavier than ever, because this time, I wasn't just carrying lipstick and tissues. I was carrying closure. Dean approached again, this time holding a printed schedule. "They're about to start speeches," he said quietly. "And Olivia?" I asked. "On edge. Already yelled at one of the florists for the napkin color." I almost smiled. "Almost. Are the vendors briefed?" "All of them. Silent compliance. Once you give the word, the mic's yours." I nodded. He hesitated, then added, "You sure about this?" I looked across the room, at Daniel, laughing stiffly at a cousin's joke, at Olivia, smiling like a queen who hadn't noticed her crown was cracking, and I nodded. "I'm not taking the spotlight. I'm just flipping the switch." But before I could take a step, something happened. Something I hadn't planned for. Something that pushed everything past the point of forgiveness. Olivia rose from her seat and tapped her glass with a fork. The room quieted. "Before the speeches begin," she said, voice smooth and sweet, "I just want to thank everyone for making today so beautiful." Polite claps, she went on. "I also want to take a moment to thank those who helped make this venue possible. This place has been a dream of mine since I was a little girl." She gestured around with a performative sweep of her arm. "The Rose Hill Estate is one of the most exclusive venues in this state, and my parents were kind enough to cover the deposit." Another round of clapping. My jaw tightened. No mention of Harold. No mention of the Whitman legacy. She continued, "We're starting fresh today. A new chapter. And we want to build a family that reflects our values. Loyalty. Grace. Simplicity." I felt the blood rise in my ears. Loyalty? Grace? She was standing in a building my husband had helped restore with his bare hands, painted walls, installed lights, negotiated contracts, and she was claiming credit with her pearl-pink nails and airbrushed speeches. She wasn't just pretending I didn't exist. She was erasing Harold, too. That was the final straw. I moved. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just deliberately. Dean saw me and gave the signal. The mic was rerouted to the side booth. Olivia turned, confused. Daniel stood up. The guests grew quiet again as I reached the small platform at the edge of the tent, the same one where the band had played earlier. I didn't touch the central mic. Instead, Dean handed me the portable one. "Ready?" he whispered. I nodded. I took a breath, looked at the crowd, and then began. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady but quiet. "May I have a moment?" Heads turned. Chairs shifted. Someone gasped. Olivia froze. Daniel looked like someone had pulled the ground from under him. "I won't be long," I said. I clutched my purse, then slowly pulled out the folder-worn leather, soft at the edges. I held it in both hands. "My name is Mabel Whitman. Some of you know me as Samuel's grandmother. Others may not know me at all." A pause. "But this venue, we didn't rent it. We built it. Harold and I. My late husband." I heard a few murmurs ripple through the crowd. "He poured concrete here. He scrubbed floors. He negotiated for this land when it was nothing but a dying vineyard with peeling walls." I opened the folder. "This contract," I lifted it, "names me as a 51% silent partner, with full legal rights to reclaim ownership under specific conditions." Dean stepped forward with copies. The venue manager followed. The lawyer, Sam, who had arrived quietly 10 minutes ago, confirmed every word. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply said, "I was told I'm not family, but my name is still carved into these walls." The silence was deafening. Daniel looked pale. Olivia stepped forward. "You can't just barge in and—" "I didn't barge in," I said calmly. "I was invited. You just didn't realize the invitation never expired. Some battles don't need armies, just memory. And proof." Behind me, the string lights flickered slightly in the wind. I saw Samuel standing now, eyes wide, a half smile curling at the edges of his lips. He looked proud. Finally, I turned toward the guests again. "I'm not here to ruin anyone's day," I said. "This event can continue, but from this moment forward, I'll be the one managing what happens next." A pause, and I promise you it will be done with real grace. And just as I turned to leave the mic, Daniel stepped into my path and whispered, "I didn't know about the contract, but I knew she didn't want you here." I didn't know about the contract, but I knew she didn't want you here. Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper, but the words struck like thunder. I froze. He was standing close now, just off to the side of the platform. His eyes, those same eyes I once kissed goodnight, were bloodshot, conflicted, twitching between shame and stubbornness. "You knew," I said slowly, not needing to raise my voice. "You knew, and you let it happen?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The silence said more than any apology ever could. Around us, the wedding had come to a full stop. Guests no longer tried to mask their curiosity. Forks hovered mid-air, conversations stalled mid-sentence. Olivia stood a few feet away, arms crossed tightly, jaw locked. My body ached, shoulders tight, heart pounding, mouth dry. But I kept my voice level. "You stood by," I said, "while your wife erased me from seating charts, ignored my RSVP, whispered lies about my stability." "I didn't know she said that," he cut in quickly, his voice cracking. "Don't lie now, Daniel." My son looked at the ground like it held answers. "I thought it was easier, less drama. She said you'd make it about you. She said you'd ruin things." I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. "And what exactly did I ruin? The illusion? The photographs?" He looked like a boy again, small, lost, desperate to please someone who never cared about him the way I did. "Sometimes, the people you raise learn to be cowards, and you love them anyway, but you don't excuse them. You hurt me," I said plainly. "Not by forgetting me, but by knowing it was happening and staying quiet." Daniel swallowed hard. "I just wanted peace." "You don't find peace by throwing away the people who gave you everything," I replied. Behind him, Olivia moved closer. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "This was supposed to be our day, Daniel. Not her vendetta. He turned to her. For the first time, I saw something shift behind his eyes. She owns this place, he said. So what? Olivia spat. You think that means she gets to hijack our wedding? He didn't answer. That silence, his second silence, spoke again. Olivia turned on me, voice sharp. You've made your point. Now step back and let the event continue. I will, I said calmly, but under new terms. Her nostrils flared. Terms? Yes, I said. My staff, my schedule, and my table. She scoffed. You don't get a table. Dean stepped forward. She does now. Grandma's table, right up front. Several heads turned. A few clapped quietly. I saw the cracks deepen in Olivia's mask, but she held it together, just barely. I turned back to Daniel. I will always be your mother, I said, even if you forget, even if you try to bury me behind borrowed flowers and matching napkins. He didn't speak, just nodded. Once, almost imperceptibly. Would you forgive someone who erased you, if they admitted they stood by in silence? Or is silence the loudest betrayal of all? Sometimes, it's not the knife but the hand that refuses to stop it that hurts the most. The tension slowly eased as I stepped down from the platform. Dean guided me gently toward the front, where a new table had been set, cloth freshly laid, chair fluffed with a silk pillow. Grandma's table. A hand-lettered sign hung from the back. A single teacup waited, filled and steaming. As I sat, the first tear finally fell. Not from pain, not from shame, but from release. I sipped my tea. It was warm, strong, sweet, just how I liked it. And as the speeches began again, guests slowly turned their attention back to the couple. Olivia's parents stared straight ahead. Daniel held the mic now, thanking guests, voice tight with nerves. I didn't listen to all of it, because in that moment, I was already planning what came next, and when I looked down at the legal papers in my purse, I knew exactly how this story would end. Not with applause, but with transfer forms and one final signature. The applause at the end of Daniel's speech was short, polite, uneven. Even he knew it. He set the mic down with a sigh so heavy it almost echoed. Olivia didn't even touch his hand when he returned to her side. She just blinked at him, jaw stiff, her smile nothing more than a frozen shape. I watched all this from my table, the table they never intended to give me, the one now marked with a handwritten card that read Grandma in thick black ink. A plate of lemon pie sat in front of me, my own recipe, quietly fetched by Dean from the backup kitchen supplies I hadn't known he saved. I took a bite. The taste stopped me. Flaky crust, zesty center, a touch of vanilla. Just like the one I used to make for Daniel on his birthdays. Just like the one Olivia had forgotten to serve last Easter. After the pie, the music returned. Soft jazz now. No one danced. People mingled again, but it was different this time. The energy had shifted. Conversation was tight-lipped. The bride's side gathered in protective circles, whispering. Daniel stayed seated, mostly alone. Samuel hovered nearby, offering tight smiles to guests, his eyes glancing toward me every few minutes. And Olivia? She disappeared for a while. When she returned, her eyeliner was smudged. Her mother walked beside her, lips pinched in fury. A storm was building, and I knew it wouldn't be mine. The venue manager came to my table, his voice low. Mrs. Whitman, he said. The documents have been notarized. Thank you, I replied. When the last guest leaves, please make the delivery. He nodded. Would you like to speak to them privately? Number. He blinked. No? I'm done speaking, I said. They'll get the message in writing. He hesitated, then offered a quiet, understood, and walked away. It was quiet justice. Not loud, not cruel, just final. The documents were clean and legal. I'd transferred full venue ownership, not to Daniel, not to the couple, but to the Whitman Widows Fund, a nonprofit I'd set up in Harold's name. It would now offer free wedding space to widows, single mothers, and caretakers who'd never dreamed of such a place. Starting with next spring, this venue would never again be used to exclude the hands that built it. When people show you you're unwanted, don't beg to stay. Rewrite the contract, move the walls, become the landlord of your own dignity. Near the end of the night, Samuel found me again. "Grandma," he said softly, kneeling beside me. I turned to him, and for the first time that day, I saw no conflict in his face, only clarity. "I want to visit you next weekend," he said. "I want to hear your stories, the real ones." My hand found his cheek. "I'd like that. And I'm sorry," he added, "for all of it, even what I didn't do." I nodded. "You came back. That's enough." He hesitated, then pulled something from his coat pocket, a folded page torn from a guest book. On it, he'd written, "The strongest roots are the ones buried quietly beneath the floorboards. Thank you for being our foundation." My throat tightened. I folded the page and tucked it beside Harold's photo in my purse. Daniel didn't approach me again. Not during the cake cutting, not during the bouquet toss, not even as the guests began to file out, shaking off the weight of a celebration gone crooked. Olivia never looked in my direction, but as they left, I caught a moment, brief, silent, where Daniel looked over his shoulder. His expression was hollow. Not hate, not anger, just realization. And in that moment, I hoped he finally understood. When the venue finally emptied, and the staff began sweeping rose petals into plastic bins, I stood alone in the garden. Rain still lingered in the air. The lights above me blinked in soft yellow rhythms. Dean approached, his arms crossed. "Never seen a takedown like that," he said. "It wasn't a takedown," I replied. "It was a correction." He smiled. "Same thing in my book." And as I looked out over the empty chairs, one in particular still marked family only, I knew the most important seat had always been mine. They just forgot, but I never did. It was well past midnight when I heard the knock. Soft, hesitant. Not like the kind guests make. Not like the kind friends make either. This was the kind of knock that carried guilt in every tap. I'd been sitting by the fireplace in the small lounge behind the venue's kitchen. A room Harold had built with his own hands, plaster, drywall, even the old mantel carved from a fallen oak tree in our backyard. I hadn't turned the lights on. The glow from the fire was enough. The warmth wrapped around me like a shawl. The air smelled faintly of old cedar and lemon oil. My tea had gone cold in my hands. The knock came again. 3 soft taps, then silence. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. The door opened slowly, and Daniel stepped inside. He looked different. Not just tired, deflated, unraveled. The suit jacket was gone. His white shirt stained faintly at the collar. He held a crumpled napkin in one hand and nothing else. No speech, no defenses. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. I didn't speak. He shifted uncomfortably in the doorway. "I figured you'd be here," he added. "You always liked this room." Still, I said nothing. He looked around like he was searching for the past. "I remember when Dad installed that fireplace. You made cocoa for us the same night. We sat on the floor and watched it burn till 2 a.m. I nodded once. "You broke the marshmallow tongs. He didn't even scold you." Daniel gave a half laugh. "He never did." A pause stretched between us, long and fragile. "I was wrong," he said. Still, I waited. "I should have stopped her. I should have told you earlier. I knew what she was doing, the emails, the guest list edits, even the seating arrangement. She said it was for optics, that it would be easier without distractions." "Distractions," I repeated softly. He sat on the bench across from me. Not too close, not assuming. "She convinced me you'd embarrass us, that you'd cry or make it about Dad, that you'd take the attention. And you believed her." He swallowed. "I did." For a moment, the fire cracked. We both watched it. "I don't hate you," I said finally, "but I no longer wait for you." His eyes flickered. "I waited for years, Daniel. waited for a phone call, a thank you, a come for dinner that never came. I stood in hospital rooms alone, celebrated holidays alone. I mailed gifts that were never opened. He looked down. You didn't just let her exclude me, I continued. You let her redefine me. I didn't know how to stop her. You didn't want to. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something, a key. He placed it on the table between us. What's this? Spare key to the house, he said. In case you ever want to come by. I stared at it. Didn't touch it. After a long pause, I replied, I don't need keys to places where I'm unwelcome. I have my own house, my own locks, my own table. I wasn't your mother for decoration. I was your foundation. You don't hang foundations on the wall and forget them when the paint dries. He flinched, but nodded. I'm sorry. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I know. Silence again. Then, softly, what happens now? I leaned forward, opened my purse, and handed him a copy of the legal transfer. This is what happens now, I said. The venue's been signed over to a widow's fund. No more weddings like this will happen here. No more mothers will be told they don't belong. He looked stunned. You gave it away? I returned it, I said. To people who know what sacrifice tastes like. He blinked rapidly. I didn't expect that. That's because you don't understand legacy, I replied. You think it's a picture on the wall. It's not. It's what lives when you leave the room. He rose slowly. Didn't reach for the key. Didn't reach for a hug. Just nodded, once, and turned to leave. At the door, he paused. When I'm ready to do better, will you answer if I knock again? I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. After he left, I sat there a while longer, my hands still warm from the paper. The rain had begun again, soft against the roof. And something in me, something I hadn't felt in years, settled. Not victory, not revenge, just equilibrium. And the next morning, as I poured fresh tea at home, the front door opened not with a knock, but with a voice I never expected to hear again. Grandma? I turned toward the door, still in my robe, tea halfway to my lips. There he stood. Samuel, holding a small cardboard box, rain dripping from the edge of his hood. He looked like a boy again, eyes wide, breath fast, like he'd run all the way from the wedding. I didn't knock, he said, stepping inside. Didn't want you to think I was asking for permission. He placed the box on the table. His clothes were damp, his shoes muddy. You came alone? I asked. He nodded. Left before the reception ended. I couldn't stay. I motioned to the kettle. Still warm. He smiled. I'll make the cups. The rain picked up outside as we sat together, 2 steaming mugs between us. He reached into the box and began pulling things out slowly, like they mattered. A corsage. A copy of the seating chart, with my name scribbled in at the bottom in his handwriting. A napkin with Grandma's table written in thick marker. And finally, the guest photo he'd taken with me earlier, the only one he asked for all night. I want this one framed, he said. For my future kids, so they know who kept the place standing. I couldn't speak. He poured more tea. I overheard Mom saying she wished you were dead. My heart clenched. I'm sorry, he added quickly. I didn't mean to say it like that. No, I said softly. You needed to say it. Some truths burn, but silence burns longer. She always acted like you were some embarrassing remnant, he went on. But you weren't. You were the blueprint. I blinked, hard. You still are. We sat in silence, sipping our tea, the rain tapping gently on the window. I stared at the photograph. My old dress, my tired smile, his hand on my shoulder. I looked back at Samuel. What happens next? He didn't hesitate. We start over. You and me. A pause. I want your stories. I want to know about Harold, about Dad's childhood. I want to know what you lost to give us what we have. You may not like all of it. I warned. I don't need perfect, he said. I need true. He helped me pack away the photo albums that had sat untouched for years. We opened the good china and shared cake from a box Olivia had forgotten at the venue. We talked about nothing and everything. For once, the house felt full. As he got ready to leave, he stopped at the door. One more thing, he said. He handed me a folded envelope. Inside was a printed contract venue usage approval for the Widow's Fund donation. Signed, already delivered to the county registrar, he said. Dean helped file it. It's officially yours to give. I looked up. Why did you go out of your way to help? He smiled. Because you've always gone out of your way for everyone else. He stepped outside, the rain softening into mist. See you Sunday, he called. I'm bringing cinnamon rolls. And just like that, the door closed. But not my heart. Not this time. I stayed by the window after he left, fingers wrapped around my teacup. Outside, the street glistened with silver puddles. The empty chair across from me no longer felt like a reminder of loss. It felt like an invitation. To begin again. Is dignity worth more than being loved by those who hurt you? Or is real love the kind that returns not with flowers, but with truth and time? I took one last sip of tea. Warm now, not forgotten. And for the first time in years, I smiled. Not out of pride, not out of spite, but peace. They said I wasn't family, but I remembered who built the home. I hadn't expected another knock. Not so soon. Not after Samuel's visit. Not after the transfer papers had been delivered and signed. But 3 days later, just after noon, as the scent of baking apples filled my small kitchen and the radio murmured some old Billie Holiday tune, the door creaked open this time with no hesitation. It was Daniel. He looked like he hadn't slept. His collar was wrinkled, his shoes muddy, and in his hand was a paper bag, slightly crumpled at the edges. I brought you pie, he said awkwardly. I didn't speak. He shifted from foot to foot, like a boy caught in a lie he wasn't quite sure how to undo. I know you probably don't want it, he added quickly. It's lemon, from that same bakery you liked. I remembered. I stood still, tea towel in my hand. The smell of cinnamon hung in the air. He set the bag gently on the counter. I know I have no right to come here. You don't, I said flatly. His shoulders dropped. I needed to look you in the eye. One last time. He moved to the chair, Harold's chair, and hovered. He didn't sit, just stood beside it. I lost Olivia, he said. I didn't respond. She left the day after the wedding. Said I embarrassed her. Said I picked you. I raised an eyebrow. Did you? He swallowed. Not soon enough. He looked older now. Not in his face, but in the way his pride had deflated. In the way his silence now carried a visible weight. I let her erase you, he admitted, because it was easier than standing up. And now? I asked. I stand alone, he said. For a moment, we both listened to the clock ticking on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. Time moving forward. I found the photo of you and Dad, he said suddenly. The one in the navy dress. I'd kept it in my drawer all these years. Why? I asked. He shrugged. Because I knew. Deep down, I knew what we were doing was wrong. But I didn't know how to stop the train once it started. That's a coward's excuse, I said quietly. He didn't argue. He looked down at his hands. Do you hate me? No, I said. But I no longer carry you in the center of my heart. That hurt him. I saw it. And I let it sit. Because truth should ache a little when it's been buried too long. I'm leaving town, he said after a moment. Taking some time. Maybe for good. I didn't ask where. Didn't offer comfort. Just listened. He looked around my little kitchen. The old fridge, the lace curtains, the tea kettle. It's funny, he said. All these years we lived in bigger houses, fancier places. But this feels more like home. Because you helped build it, I said. Before you forgot how. He finally reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded envelope. Can you at least read this? He asked. Not now. Later. I took it, not because I owed him, but because I wanted the silence to end. He nodded, took one step back. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said again. And then he added, but I hope one day, if I knock again, you'll open the door. Is forgiveness something we offer freely? Or something that must be earned in silence, through time? Tell me, would you open the door again, or keep it closed forever? After he left, I placed the envelope on the table. Didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I poured a fresh cup of tea, the smell of apples still sweet in the air. Outside, the wind shifted. The neighbors' kids ran past the fence, laughing. Somewhere, someone's dog barked at the mailman. The world hadn't stopped. It never does. But something in me had changed. And when I finally sat down to read what he'd written, I realized the story wasn't just about what I lost, but what I reclaimed. The venue looked nothing like it did the day of the wedding. The petals were gone. The champagne flutes replaced by mason jars. The crisp white linen swapped for soft hand-stitched tablecloths donated by a local quilting circle. And the chairs, those stiff gold-trimmed things Olivia insisted on, had been returned and replaced with worn wooden benches Harold and I once stored in our garage. They called it Marjorie's house now, after the first widow to use the venue under the new fund, a 62-year-old teacher who lost her husband of 40 years to cancer. Her wedding, to a retired postman named Joe, was scheduled for spring. She cried when she saw the place. Not because it was grand, it wasn't, but because it felt like someone thought she still mattered. I walked the halls slowly that day, the staff greeting me not as a guest, not as a burden, but as something else entirely. A matriarch. The air smelled of vanilla candles and fresh lilacs. Dean walked beside me, clipboard in hand, humming to himself. We've got 7 applications this month, he said. All widows. Most never thought they'd wear a white dress again. I smiled. Let them wear whatever they want. He laughed. One of them's requesting a karaoke machine. Make it happen, I said. We reached the far end of the garden, where a new wooden plaque had been installed. Whitman Garden, in honor of Harold and Mabel Whitman, built not on wealth, but on love, given not for profit, but for peace. I traced my finger along the engraving. Harold would have rolled his eyes at the fuss, then kissed my hand and said, "Let them fuss." The sky was gray, but the day felt warm. Samuel arrived around noon, carrying a box of cupcakes and a folder of resumes. Dean says he might have an opening, he said. Facilities assistant. Already? I teased. He shrugged. I want to build something, Grandma. Something real. Something that gives back. You're already starting, I said, taking a cupcake. We sat beneath the arbor, the same one Daniel had been married under, just weeks before, and sipped tea from thermoses. This feels better, he said. It is better, I replied. Tea and empty chair. Beside us sat a small, empty bench. No plaque, no ribbon, just a space. Samuel noticed. Who's that for? No one, I said. And everyone. He smiled. Think Dad will ever sit there? I don't know, I said honestly. But the seat will be here, if he ever learns how to face it. Later, I returned home alone. My porch light flickered on as I approached another thing Harold had installed himself. I stepped inside, hung up my coat, and went straight for the kitchen. Same kettle, same soft radio in the background, same teacup I'd used the day Daniel pushed me aside. But this time, it was warm. I reached for the envelope he'd left, sat down, unfolded the note slowly. Mom, I don't deserve forgiveness. I may never, but I hope someday I deserve to be heard again. If you ever write back, leave the porch light on. I'll wait. Daniel. I folded it, placed it inside the drawer where I kept my recipes and small paper memories. Then I stood, walked to the porch, and left the light on. Just in case. They tried to take my seat, tried to fold my name out of the family story. But what they forgot was this. The foundation doesn't leave. The roots don't beg for sunlight. And dignity doesn't need permission to stay. I took one last sip of tea, still warm in my hands, and finally, It tasted like peace.